Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another post-game show here on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. And we're into the second or third round here at Colorado Avalanche and Edmonton Oilers Western Conference Final. And we got a barn burner. Game one, just like the Battle of Alberta, we get a crazy high-scoring game. Final 8-6, and that's not a typo, and it's not. I didn't misspeak. It was 8-6. The final score. I'm not going to run through all the guys that scored. You can go to the box score to read all that. But I've got Jim Parsons, Kerry Collins joining me on this post-game show. Of course, we were on the preview show on this one just not that long ago. So welcome, gentlemen. Jim, we'll start with you on this one. What a crazy game one. What are your initial thoughts on this game?
What is it with the Oilers in game one? Like, honestly, should we have expected anything else? I mean, against the Los Angeles Kings, game one was a gong show with Mike Smith giving the puck up and losing that game. Calgary, they get scored on 3 times in the first 10 minutes. He gets pulled, and it's like 15 goals in the first game against Calgary. They lose that game, but then win 4 in a row. Like, what is it with the Oilers in game one? They just cannot figure out a way to play their own system, play their own game, and actually do what they're good at. Yet they somehow decide to just run it up, shoot them up style kind of game, which is you'd think would suit them on paper, right? They're the kind of team with the skill level that could do it, and they weren't out of this game really ever. But this is not their game. This is not what they should be doing, and they do this every opening of every series so far this year. And they're going to need to figure out how to not do this again, because if they try to play this game, and I said it in the last video, if they try to play this game against Colorado's got the skill and the speed to make them pay for it. And that's exactly what happened tonight. So game one was not a shocker to me. I didn't think they'd win, but I did not expect this. This was
they've given up. So what? They've given up 21 goals in their 3 game ones so far in this playoffs. And they are 8-2 after that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this, especially with how you talk about the game ones being a gong show. For Colorado, it's been game 2. I mean, they won like 7-2 or whatever the first game against Nashville. They have to win in overtime. Then they win in overtime against St. Louis in game 1, and then they just get their doors blown off 4-1, and it wasn't even that close, I don't think, in game 2. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back.
That's right. I mean, Kerry, like you said, Avalanche have been up and down in that case too, but they play their game at a fast pace. They're one of those teams that just they're on the rush. They play the game at 100 miles an hour, and you see what Nathan MacKinnon can do with that speed. What'd you think about game one?
Yeah, I just think, we said this on the podcast this morning. We were talking about how Cale Makar might have to hang back a little bit. And I flat out said, they don't do that. He just refuses to do that. It doesn't matter if it's 7-4 or if they're down 4-2. And I knew they were going to come out flying. They've done that last couple of years in every game one. It was big that Evander Kane scored that first goal, but then just boom, 30 seconds later. And then all of a sudden, you've got this crazy roller hockey game. And then it's like, I just thought, even when you didn't really feel like Jim said, you didn't feel like Edmonton was really out of it. Even when it was 7-4, McDavid gets that late goal, and you're like, these guys can score a couple of goals fast. They talked about it on the broadcast too, is don't give up the 8th goal, and he didn't. And I don't think anyone in that building, was comfortable until that last horn sounded.
Well, we hyped up the McDavid MacKinnon matchup before this series, and there's been a lot of people that have done it. Jim, what'd you think about them? They seemed like Colorado's okay with going MacKinnon McDavid as a matchup at least in Colorado. We'll see what they do in Edmonton. But what did you think about the matchup? How did McDavid kind of handle going against MacKinnon and Makar every shift?
I think McDavid found a way, right? The first period, he was kind of handcuffed by the Avalanche, and it wasn't just MacKinnon that was, on top of him. Landeskog was in his face, and the guys were really pinching up on him tight. And he wasn't very effective in the first period. I mean, the Oilers were terrible in the first period. I don't know what the shots were by the end of it, but they were just not very good. They had the first goal with the Kane breakaway, but other than that, they were pretty awful. But McDavid figured it out. He ended up with 3 points, right? He got a goal and 2 assists. So this is what McDavid does. He just figures out. Doesn't matter what the matchup is. Doesn't matter who's guarding him, covering him, who's playing against them on shift to shift. He doesn't care, right? He's going to do what McDavid does, and he figured out a way. So I do believe the Oilers will come back in the second game, and having looked at this first game and said, okay, this is what we do, but we know we should be different and better and whatever. And they'll come out with a different game plan and play a more structured game. Even McDavid will do that, right? But I thought he did okay. I mean, he had strong numbers. It just took him a while tonight to kind of get his rhythm, get going. And regardless of who's on them, and we'll see what the matchups are like at home, like when they get last change and stuff. We'll see if the Oilers go head to head with that or not. But I don't think that's a huge concern, to be totally honest with you. I don't think McDavid's worried about it. I think he's just going to do his thing and play his game and figure out how to get around the 5-man coverage, because there was one goal where he dumped it off to Kulak, who then put it in front of the net to Hyman, who scored, where 3 guys were covering McDavid, right? So he just gave it away. He just said, okay, well, here, you take it. And it worked out to be a goal. So he figures it out. Like, it's not something he has to worry about. But yeah, it is an interesting matchup. Like, these guys are going straight at each other.
Yeah, I like personally, I like the power on power. I mean, beat each other. I mean, that's like, instead of trying to go defense against the guy, just, see how they match up against each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes as the series goes, because as long as McDavid's handling it, I don't think Woodcroft cares if, even at home, okay, we'll go against or whatever. Kerry, what'd you think about MacKinnon's game and this one? Again, going against a guy like McDavid every shift, and seemed like he relished it because he was on him almost every time and keeping up with him there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard for those two to, not be on the ice at least some of the time. They just play so many minutes. I mean, they're going to play 20, 25 minutes every night. So I just thought MacKinnon he was electric again in this game. He just seems like he's got an extra gear. McDavid's the same way, though. But it just seems like they find this extra gear sometimes, and then you've got these like solid defensemen that just look like they're standing still. And I mean, goal was a big one for them, especially. He ended up with a goal and an assist. Ended up getting 4 shots. So he was in it for sure, and they've got to have him in it, because there's been a couple of games like against St. Louis, Ryan O'Reilly just erased him. And not every team's got a Ryan O'Reilly, of course, but it just seems like when he's in it, he's electric every time he's on the ice, and he looked a little bit like that most of this game.
Yeah. Well, let's move to the depth. We talked about the depth in our storylines too, and it came through in this game as well. Jim, what'd you think about the secondary scoring in this game? I mean, if this is the case, it's going to be like Derek Ryan scored a goal in this game. Yeah. Got it from every line. Ryan McLeod. What'd you think about those guys in this game, how their performance?
Yeah, I mean, they did well. We talked about that's probably going to be the key to the success in this series. It's whoever depth steps up. And in the first period, I mean, it wasn't Comfort the guy that scored for Colorado, and then
Comfort, yeah,
and Nugent-Hopkins got one. Derek Ryan got one. Ryan McLeod got one. There were some chances, for guys that didn't get anything, but they were right in there, right? So it's going to be big. Like when these guys are doing their head-to-head matchups and the stars are going at each other, you need those guys to kind of accent and fill in and play a role. I thought this was maybe the most effective the fourth line for the Oilers have been, even though I don't think they got very many minutes. They looked like they were engaged in the game. Hyman was hitting, Archibald was hitting. They got some chances. Ryan scored. So I think that was good. For overall, though, the Oilers just they were out of their mind and panicking a little bit in their own zone, and fourth line, first line, everybody. They just couldn't get it out of their zone and clear. And I think that's what killed them. The Colorado just forechecked them heavy, kept the zone, held the zone, and scored those goals. And that's the overall thing the team needs to do. The depth is stepping up offensively, but it's the overall helping on defense and coming back and pinching that zone and hitting the outlet pass and stuff like that they weren't doing in this game, that they got to figure out a way to do. And that everybody's got to step up and do it. Not just the top guys, not just the defensemen. All the forwards got to come back and help clear that zone, because that killed them tonight. Colorado held that zone and scored like 3 or 4 goals that way.
Yeah. Kerry, the depth on Colorado stepped up too. I mean, we talked about Comfort. He got 2 goals. Rantanen got a couple of points, a goal and assist. So talked about him stepping up. He did. Kadri, Landeskog at the empty netter. Do you think this is the thing they're going to have to do against the Oilers? The Oilers depth steps up like this. I mean, Colorado's going to have to do it as well.
Yeah, they're going to have to match them for sure. And I mean, I'm sure everybody had Andrew Cogliano with the game winner in this one. So, if they're getting goals from guys like he had a shorthanded goal in the first series against Nashville, the lines have been stepping up. Comfort's been huge. I mean, he's got 4 goals now in his last 2 games. And I mean, getting that goal bang 36 seconds right after Evander Kane scores, that's a huge goal. And then, you turn around in the second period and like they're sort of battling still back and forth, it's like 4-3 and Rantanen scores and then bang, Comfort scores like a minute and a half later. So both of those goals were pretty big and pretty important goals. And they're just going to need to keep getting that. I don't know if it's going to be Comfort every time or who it's going to be. I mean, Alex Newhook, I thought played a great game, but they're going to need guys like that to step up. So yeah, if they're getting, 3 goals from guys like Comfort and Cogliano, that's a tall order. Edmonton's going to need, the same thing, and then getting stuff from like Derek Ryan and McLeod. So those are big goals too.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to the controversial play that was, Cale Makar scores a goal. Looked like it was offside on a lot of angles. They had to go and explain it quite a bit to why it was actually onside. But Jim, we'll start with, was it offside? I mean, from what you could see on this play.
Yeah. Yeah, it was offside. You cannot convince me. I understand the logic behind what they're arguing the rule is. And for those who don't understand, basically the deal is Colorado's guy was in the zone. He was trying to clear the zone. Cale Makar was coming in. What they're arguing is that Cale Makar didn't actually play the puck. He moved the puck in and then didn't touch it again until his own guy had come out of the zone and cleared. To me, Cale Makar is controlling that puck. He has got absolute control over that thing, even though he's on his back end and even though he doesn't touch it again, he's got control over that puck. And if you're trying to argue to me that stick handling means your puck is on your stick all the time, that's ridiculous. Nobody stick handles and touches the puck 100% of the time. So that means to me that you can't stick handle over the line either, because unless you let the puck leave your stick, what do you like? It's crazy. It's the dumbest rule I've ever seen. Now, I'm not saying this is why the Oilers lost this game, but because they did this to themselves in the first period and then let the get out of their control. But that was crippling. There's no reason that the Oilers would have challenged that goal if they had thought for 1 second that wasn't offside, right? And so what ends up happening was they call that onside, they get a penalty, and Kadri scores in the first 10 seconds of the second period. Like, that was crippling. That was absolutely crazy. And to me, I'm sorry, but Cale Makar knows what he's doing. Now, you might argue that he knows what he's doing to the point where he doesn't touch the puck, so he knows that he can be onside. I don't think that. I think he's just playing it and didn't happen to touch the puck. I think he's got full control. He's stick handling to me. He just happens to be on his back end. That was the most blatant offside call I think I've seen in a long time. And I think they got it totally wrong, even though I understand the rules. So I don't know. Kerry might argue the opposite, but to me, and I get why they say it, and they showed clips from another game where Michael Bunting did the same thing.
Yeah.
I hate that rule. It's ridiculous. It's crazy that you can tell me that you can lob the puck an inch off the ice and then not touch it again for about a half a second. And then that's considered a smart onside play. That was offside. That was absolutely offside.
All right, Kerry, what do you think on the
I completely agree with Jim. To me, any league north of bantams, you're not just pushing the puck down the ice. I mean, everyone that saw that replay before the ref announced it thought it was offsides. Everyone in the booth thought it was offsides. Everyone on the broadcast in the middle, in between periods, thought that was offsides. And there's probably 100 years of NHL experience sitting at that table, on the broadcast. So, and they're all like, "Oh, wow, I didn't even know that was the rule." Even the ref, when he read or when he said, "Hey, this is a good goal," I don't think he even believed it. He didn't. He had to explain it pointedly, and I don't think that they, to me, it just shocked me. When it happened, and Jim can say, oh yeah, it didn't cost them the game. They put themselves in that situation. That's a goal that never should have happened. By almost everybody. I mean, if you watched that replay and said, oh yeah, that's going to be a good goal, he didn't have possession of you're lying. You're making it up. So
two goals that shouldn't have happened because they go up 3-2 and then they score
that's
the
a goal.
goal.
It's how different is that if it's 2-2 going into the second period? Edmonton's feeling like we just took a huge punch here from Mike Tyson, and we're still up going into the second round. And instead, now they're down 4-2 30 seconds into the period. I mean, you could it's just tough for me. I don't like you lose a challenge, the other team gets a free power play. I don't like that rule either, but it's just like, it just seemed, I was shocked when they called that a good goal. And I just didn't, I agree with Jim. I just didn't, I understand that if that's the rule, but I just didn't understand. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah. If they're saying that's the rule and they're right that that's the rule, change the rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a stupid rule. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I mean, I didn't understand it when they're doing it. It's like, oh yeah, it's clearly offside. And I'm like, well, the guy's like in the zone and he's pushing, and then they're like, I'm like, that's confusing. I didn't even understand it when Ron McLean kind of said all that stuff. It's like, it's clear as day. I'm like, not really, but okay.
Well, they're giving Cale Makar credit for about a half a second worth of thinking that I just will loft this in and not touch it again till my guy's out. Okay,
like, no.
maybe.
If Cale Makar can make that decision on the fly, even though when you watch the replay, he had no clue that Nichushkin was even there.
Yeah.
And if he can make that decision in 0.3 of a second, forget the Norris Trophy, give him the Hart for the rest of his life. Yeah. Because then he's the greatest reactionary player I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's fantastic, but that's giving him way too much credit.
And I mean, I don't know. I just disagreed, like what Jim said. I just disagreed with, if that's the rule, fine, I get it. Then you got to change the rule, because it just takes away the, sort of spirit of offsides. If you're just saying, well, too bad.
I get it. If you loft a pitch wedge in there, a pitching wedge, and the puck goes like 15 feet in the air and then you come in, okay. That's clear, right?
Yeah.
But
that's a different
he's clearly
play.
Bringing that in on his backhand.
I mean, even when they read it, they showed Woodcroft right away. And his eyes were as big as saucers, and he's grabbing the, iPad. He's grabbing the tablet to go like, hey, look, what are you guys watching? Which tells me that even the coach, thought that rule was, BS. And I mean, it just seemed, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's the nature of the rules intended, I guess. I don't know. It just seems like it was sort of nitpicky and
and that's the kicking motion was the one.
Yeah.
And then we got this one.
It's not that different. Like, it's two different plays and two completely different whatevers, but it's not that different, right? Like, the nature of the rule versus the way that they call it. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great way to put it, Jim, saying, if you don't think Cale Makar was in control of that puck, I mean, that there's no way that no one's going to argue that. And I mean, you could show that if people that didn't watch that game, you could show that to 1,000 coaches across the country. And I bet 999 of them are going to say it was offsides, and the other one's just going to say no because he's a contrarian.
Well, we got drama in the first game, so what's next? So
yeah,
before we end this, I want to ask of the goaltending, because we had both backups come into this game. One because it allowed a bunch of goals, the other because of apparent injury. Kerry, what do you think? Do you think Kemper's out for a while now? What do you think that play was? I mean, I know we're not going to speculate because we don't know, but what do you think about Kemper? And on by extension, Frank Hughes had a ridiculously good game after he came in. What do you think is going to happen going forward?
I mean, it was just so interesting because start the second period, he's late to come out because he's messing with his gear. And then when he leaves, you think, gosh, this guy's got to get a new pair of skates or something. And then Keith Jones on the broadcast says, if he's still dealing with an equipment thing, they got to get a new equipment guy. And that's when you kind of realize this guy's been hurt. He's been gone for like 6-7 minutes of play. And it's tough. Francouz was good when he came back in, except he did get outscored 3-1. It was 6-3 when Kemper left. It's just a tough situation. This is just reminiscent of 2 years ago when Philip Grubauer was lights out in the playoffs for the Avalanche. And then he got hurt against Dallas. Francouz has to come in, and he actually does pretty well. And then he gets hurt, and they got to throw Michael Hutchinson in there. And it just seems like, and then the wheels fell off. And it just seems like, I mean, if he's out for any extended period of time, how much do you trust Francouz? That was the first time he'd ever faced Edmonton in his career. And I don't know, he looked good, especially at the end. He had that one crazy kick save, which looked more ridiculous because he's shorter than most goalies now. But I don't know. I just think it's a tough situation because they kind of lean on Kemper, and you don't know what you're going to get from Francouz just because he hasn't really played that much for the past few years because of injuries and surgeries and you name it. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they say tomorrow about the injury. But yeah, going forward, I don't know. I didn't think this game was going to end with both backups on the ice.
Well, Jim, we're on this conversation again. Mike Smith gets pulled in game 1. Does Koskinen start game 2 in this case?
You know what? No, I don't think so. I think they go back to Mike Smith because this is what happens, right? Mike Smith has a crappy game 1, and then he's pissed off, and he comes in and he plays the lights out game 2. Having said that, though, Koskinen was pretty good, right? Yeah. Now, in the times that Koskinen has relieved Mike Smith, he's not been wonderful, but he was good tonight, so he played well enough to get consideration. But I think you still go back to Mike Smith because I think Woodcroft pulls Mike Smith because he wants to get him mad. I think he knows that Mike Smith is probably the most competitive guy in the NHL, and he does not like that. I don't actually think that this loss was on Mike Smith. I don't believe that most of the goals scored against him, even though there was a couple that were like, these weren't his fault. This was the Oilers playing really garbage hockey in front of him. And he got not mercy pulled, but kind of like, okay, let's jolt this lineup pulled. And let's see if we can't maybe anger Mike Smith into a better game 2. And I think that's why they had it. I don't know that they expect Koskinen to come in and play as well as he did, though. So it'll be very interesting. I think they go to Mike Smith, but Koskinen earned consideration here. I think the way he played, there'll be at least a conversation about it. I do want to say one thing too, and I don't want to sound like a homer, and I know that I will when I say this, but that delay for Darcy Kuemper, I don't know why there wasn't more debate about the delay of game penalty there. When he doesn't come out for the second period, and I think I might be wrong, so people will correct me in the comment section, I'm sure, but didn't they say something like 3 minutes before the game started?
Woodcroft was standing there like,
how is that not even a conversation? You know what I mean? Like, the game's supposed to start at a certain time, and Kemper's not ready, and the backup goalie's not even getting prepared to go in. Like, to me, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. That's a delay game, right? So, I mean, at least that evens at 4-on-4, right? Because they've got this crappy offside call that they're down a man now. Yeah. That at least would put it 4-on-4. If I'm on Woodcroft, I'm arguing that till I'm told to shut up, because I think that's a delay of game. Like, so just a weird game, man. Like, everything about this game was just so strange. And we've seen it so many times in the playoffs. You can't say there's not entertainment value here because it's been insane.
Well, I mean, back on the Mike Smith thing, I think that Edmonton now knows, hey, Koskinen pretty good. But every time they showed Mike Smith sitting on the bench, you couldn't see what was going on behind him because there was waves of heat.
Yeah,
like radiating off of his head. Right? He looked so... he looked like so angry. I made the Mike Tyson reference earlier. He looked like he was ready to get in the ring, and he looked so mad. And I mean, there's a guy like that gets focused. This same thing happened against LA. Boom, shut out the next game. Gives up 1 million goals against Calgary. Bang, they score 5 the next game, which was less than they scored in game 1. He only gives up 3. I think it was 5-3 in game 2.
Yeah,
I think you go back to him knowing that he gets into trouble again. Koskinen looked just fine, looked just fine in there. And I mean, I agree with you. I don't know if it was necessarily a mercy pulling. It was probably more of a compassion jolt pulling to try and get him going. But he also knows, Woodcroft, I think, also knows that by doing that, that is what lights the fire under, that's what pumps his tires. That's what gets him ready to go.
Yeah, so, we talk about giving people credit like Cale Makar. I think we need to give Jay Woodcroft credit here because if Mike Smith comes back in game 2 and plays really well, I think you look back at that decision to pull him and go, that angered Mike Smith.
Yeah.
And when he comes back angry, he tends to play pretty well because that's a fiery dude. And he will show up right now. He might still make mistakes, but he's gonna bring his A game.
Yeah, it's gonna be, well, we weren't shortchanged to start this series. For entertainment, if you're a fan, like you said, if you're a fan of hockey, watch this series too. This is going to be insane. If this is how it's going to go, obviously probably not going to get this crazy game again. We didn't get it in the Calgary Edmonton series, even in the Battle of Alberta, even though that game 1 was 9-6, right? So
yeah,
we're probably not going to get this type of craziness, but it's still going to be crazy. So look forward to it. So thanks, Jim. Thanks, Kerry, for coming on Postgame. We will see everyone on the next one, game 2. We'll see what we're talking about then, what other type of crazy stories we'll have in store. So from me, Jim, Kerry, we'll see you next time.